Hey everyone, before we get started learning more about Brown University, we wanted to let you know that you can calculate your chances of admission at Brown and other schools with your free CollegeVine account. Start by completing your chancing profile with information such as your GPA, test scores, and extracurricular activities. From there, you can use CollegeVine's Hub tool to see your chances and information about the school, such as cost, majors, and more. Visit the link in the description below to sign up and see your chances today.
Brown, like just about every other college in the US, considers race and admissions in order to create a more diverse campus environment. By diverse, we mean how likely students are to encounter undergraduates from different racial or ethnic groups than their own, as well as the degrees of historically underrepresented groups specifically, and how many groups overall are represented. So basically, how well Brown's demographics match kind of country writ large, but with like a greater focus on how historically excluded minorities specifically are represented at Brown. And the results are mixed. So Brown is one of the most diverse colleges in the country. US News scores schools based on their diversity, and they rank Brown as a 0.64 out of 1.0. So one of the most diverse schools in the country, but it like had a 64%. And so like with 0 being, I don't know, awful, and 1.0 being kind of US News as like ideal if they're going to grade like the most diverse mathematical like school they could or something. And Brown is like 64% of the way to their ideal. Now, it's still one of the highest in the country. So 0.77 is the highest any school has gotten, and that goes to the University of Hawaii at Hilo. But like, so Brown places near the top of that list, but it's still behind many other elite institutions. Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, and Cornell all rank higher than Brown, with like Columbia being near the top. And so it, again, mixed results. One of the best in the country, but for people's like day-to-day lives who like see this as really important, it won't be like a paradise. So demographics specifically, just breaking it down, Brown publishes a diversity inclusion annual report every year. So these are official statistics from the university itself on what its undergraduate student body looks like. As of fall 2019, the undergraduate body is 42.8% white, 16.7% Asian, 11.1% Hispanic or Latino, 6.8% Black or African American, and then 0.4 for American Indian and 0.2 for Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. You'll notice that these numbers don't add up to 100. That's because there's like some double counting going on, or like some just unknowns. They don't quite go like that much into how they calculate it specifically in their public report. But you also notice that it says 11.4% are international or non-US citizens. And what that means is that Brown takes international students and kind of considers them like a totally different ethnic cultural group than like anything in the US. They're like totally out of these kind of statistics, which also makes it more complicated. Overall, about 21.2% are from historically underrepresented groups, or what Brown refers to kind of sweetly in its report, hugs. So just to kind of dive into these statistics for a second, you'll see that like only 6.8% of the student body is basically like Black people with US citizenship. That's far below like the US national percentage. So again, there are like groups that are very underrepresented at Brown. There are groups that are overrepresented. But as far as you're going to get for an American university, it is one of the best diverse environments in the country. And I just want to take a quick second and pause. I'd like to recommend that you all check out our live essay review session coming up on this Sunday at 1 p.m. So college essays are scary. There's like a lot of unfamiliar prompts. The writing style is different than what you're used to. They're just overall very weird. And this helps you with that. So when you're writing a missions essay, you're kind of speaking to this like elite language that you're probably going to be unfamiliar with. And we're here to help guide you through that process and just make sure you know what the admissions officers are expecting, how you can compete with other applicants. And I'd highly recommend that you check that out on Sunday or check out the recording if you can. So hopefully you all get that notification. And just take a second. Okay. Moving on from demographic diversity to economic diversity. Brown has the highest median family income out of the entire Ivy League. That's reported by the New York Times, and it's $204,200 a year. So the average Brown student is going to be much more wealthy than the average person in the United States. About 1/5 of students at Brown come from families within the top 1% of income earners, compared to about 1/5, but a little bit less from the bottom 60%. This, as you might imagine, does impact culture. So the clothes people wear, the amount of money that they're comfortable spending, things like that. So it is just something to be aware of, and also just the life experiences that a lot of the fellow students may have had. I would say just like be mindful of this in terms of like your expectations of what the student body is going to be like. And it is, again, it's just an aspect of the culture. And however, Brown does commit to covering to 100% of demonstrated financial aid for students. So that means Brown is still very accessible if you are if you're just like don't know how you could possibly pay for college. That helps a ton, and it is one of the best rates out of just like any comparable institution. So financially, it should be accessible, although there may be like some federal student loans without interest. But just to keep in mind that like the stories and life experiences of the students at Brown that you'll meet are going to be very different, again, from most people in the country. Just to give one example, one of my friends lives in a suburb of Los Angeles and went to a private school that had a whole field of the school dedicated to applications, so helping students through their applications. So you have like a school that also functions as kind of like a college admissions consulting service, and it's this big administration. And they tried offering like driving lessons to their students as part of their courses, because people need to drive. And they couldn't use a local country club's like driving track. So the private school that he went to actually bought the local country club and then gave everyone's parents like a country club membership packaged into their like children's private school education. And this is not that uncommon at Brown, just to kind of illustrate what it's like. Moving on, just here is like another visual. This is from the New York Times. They did like a whole series on big colleges and like what the economic diversity is like there, what kind of students attend. And as you'll see, in terms of median family income, as well as just students from the top 1, 5, and 10%, Brown is one of the highest, not just in the US, but in the Ivy League itself. Uh, Again, which is kind of unfortunate just in terms of representation from other groups, but it still should be accessible. So one last point that I want to make on diversity is that Brown has institutions on campus to promote diversity. So like I mentioned, there was that diversity and inclusion annual report. There's also like student-centered organizations like the Brown Center for Students of Color, the UFly Center, or Undocumented First Generation Low Income Student Center. And these can be a good place to provide communities to the students that they represent, as well as just resources for navigating Brown. Like if you were a first generation college student, there's a lot of things like office hours that you may not be familiar with. I actually didn't know what office hours were until my sophomore year. Probably some missed opportunities there. But if you do take advantage of these institutions, they can also help you navigate through them, and also just like, again, provide a community of people with similar life experiences to you and similar concerns, and can be a great bedrock for that.